Hey everyone, welcome back to White Sparrow Living, Luke 12:6. This is Wendy. Today I've got 5 fun fall farmhouse, say that 3 times fast. Today I've got 5 fun fall farmhouse Dollar Tree DIYs for you. If this is your first time here, welcome, and I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button down below as well as the little bell right next to it so that you can be notified every time I upload a brand new video. If you like these projects, don't forget to give them a thumbs up, comment, let me know what you think. And now, without further ado, let's get started. For our first project, we'll be using a plastic pitcher from the Dollar Tree, some white and plaster chalk paint, and then some wax in antique and a matte clear varnish, and then a decal I designed that is John 4:14, and then this beautiful array of fall flowers. And the first thing I did was give this pitcher a couple of coats of just the regular chalk paint in white, and I'm going to go on kind of messy on the second coat and a little bit thick because I want this to look like a super old and distressed and weathered pitcher, kind of made out of ceramic or clay or something, I don't even know. So after my white had completely dried, I used the chalk paint in plaster and just used kind of a cross-hatching motion to plaster that on. And then I'm almost out of my wax in antique, so I put a craft stick in there and just dipped out some, and then I just put my brush into it and kind of dry brushed over the whole thing. And then I'm going to go back with some more white until it's shaded and nicely blended into all of those colors. And then on the very top, I'm going to put my varnish so that it won't peel or scratch. And I'm going to make sure to do the bottom and the handle, and I went about 2 or 3 inches from the top on the inside as well. So I had designed this decal as a special order for a viewer, Kimberly, who had found a picture at a thrift store and painted it and got it all beautiful and put this on, and it's the perfect scripture. It says, "But whosoever drinketh of the water I shall give him shall never thirst." And that's John 4:14. And so she got it, and after it was done, she actually went outside after it was drying overnight, and it was completely broken and shattered in a million pieces. So I just wanted to give her a shout out, and I made this just kind of thinking of you, Kimberly. So she since has another one, and so I am waiting for a picture to see how that one turned out. So anyway, I just took a little piece of the buffalo check ribbon from Dollar Tree and tied it around the handle of the pitcher, and then I'm just going to take a bunch of these beautiful flowers and pop them inside, and it's done. And here it is, and I think really the flowers make this whole thing. Dollar Tree doesn't usually carry really pretty pitchers as far as the shape, so if you do want to do this project, I would recommend going to a thrift shop and finding one that is beautiful and can be painted and made to look very old. And then once you add this decal, I think it just makes such a beautiful presentation, and of course is spreading the word. For our next project, we're going to be using one of these long wooden signs, and then 3 of these wooden pumpkins, and you don't have to have 3 different colors, and then a metal word, and we're going to use the one that says harvest, and then some black grosgrain and satin ribbon in 5/8, and then some super skinny black ribbon, and then these little dot stickers that you find in the school section, and then some orange ribbon that's also 5/8 inches, and this was in the fall section, and then my Waverly chalk paint in ink and in white, and then some paddle wire, and then my hot glue gun, scissors, and my E6000. And so the first thing I'm going to do is get these things ready to paint. And so I just pulled off the raffia at the top of the pumpkins, and then I'm going to sand off that glitter, and this is actually going to be the back, but I'm going to paint the entire pumpkin, all 3 of them. And to get the stickers off, I'm going to use my heat gun just so that it pops off, and then there's still some stickies on there, so I just end up sanding those down. On one of them, I'm going to take the little stem out and leave the other two, and then I'll paint the sides of each of the pumpkins first so that I can hold it from the front and back with my fingers, and then I'll set it down and paint the top, and then once that's dry, I'll turn them over and paint the backs. And then I'm going to take my long sign and I'm going to give that a couple of coats as well, and including going over the gingham at the bottom. But we're going to use this as a stand for our 3 pumpkins. I'm always sad to cover over anything that's cutie patootie, but in this case I think it turns out cutie patootie anyway with what we're going to do after this. So then I took my chalk paint in ink, which is just black, and I'm going to paint over about 3 or 4 rows of my dots, because one of our pumpkins is going to be white with black dots, and then the other 2 we're going to put ribbon on them. So for one of them I'm just going to do horizontal stripes, and so I used my hot glue gun to wrap it around, and I'll go to the back and just give those each about the same distance apart so that it looks like it's actual stripes. And because there's little cutouts at the tops and bottoms, it worked out perfectly where I could just stay on the flat parts of the side. And then for the next one, I'm going to use the satin ribbon, and that first one was the grosgrain ribbon, and I'm going to put that ribbon vertically, and that's why we needed to take out that stem. And then I'll glue that on the back as well, and then I'll take my skinny ribbon and put those right next to it so it looks like a grain sack pattern. And so again, I'm just going to do super tiny lines of hot glue and make those meet up in the back. So now I'm going to take my chalk paint in the color pumpkin, and I realize I forgot to show you that in the supplies list, but I'm just going to give my harvest a couple of coats so that it's nice and solid. Then I'm going to take a utility knife and cut a little slit in my ribbon and pop my stem back in there and hammer that in so that it's all nice and secure. So now I'm going to take my orange ribbon, and I just cut a small piece and tied a knot, and then I'm going to cut that down on each side, and I just did a diagonal cut at the ends. And then I'm going to take my paddle wire and just cut off about 12 inches or so, wrap that around underneath the ribbon, and then take a pencil and wrap it around a bunch of times so that it becomes the little tendrils of each of the pumpkins. And then once you pull the pencil out, you can kind of pull the wire so that it makes it a little bit longer, and then you can put it in whatever direction that is cutie patootie. So now to attach my harvest sign to the base, I'm going to put it in place and then make little dots of where I will need to make little holes so that I can run some paddle wire into the wood so that I can then keep my word on the base. So to make my holes, I just took a nail and a hammer and pushed that nail into those little holes, and I was trying to be a little careful because I wasn't sure if the hardwood would actually fall apart or crack, or I didn't know what was going to happen, but I had backups just in case. But it worked out perfectly, and as long as you do little taps and do it gradually, it should be fine. So after I got my holes in place, I took some of that paddle wire and just fed it through the H and the T of harvest, and then wrapped it around on the inside of my base, and then went back in with some more pumpkin chalk paint to cover up the wires a little bit. And then that way it should stay perfectly in place. So now I'm going to attach my pumpkins to the top of the base, and I just measured in to make sure I had the same distance on each side of my first pumpkin, which is going to be in the middle, and took some pencil marks to make sure I could get the glue and the E6000 and it wouldn't hopefully seep out from underneath. So I just made 2 small lines in between those pencil marks and then placed my first pumpkin and pushed him down pretty well to make sure there was a good adhesion. And then I took my outside ones and kind of eyeballed where those would be because it was easier to see once the middle one was already there. Here it is, all done, and I am totally in love with this. It's so simple and sweet and super easy to do. I love that the black and white just makes the orange pop, and I think it's super festive, and I hope you guys like it too. For our next project, we'll be using one of these plastic bins, a chunky wood thankful sign, some Waverly chalk paint in pumpkin, which I forgot to show you guys last time, 2 pumpkins, we've got a shorty and a tall one, and I have 70-11 of these, a little piece of a chopping mat, some jute twine, and then some fall colored leaves, and then my white chalk paint and ink chalk paint. And then in spray paints, I have this Krylon matte black as well as some flat white. And then my hot glue gun, scissors, and some wire cutters. And so to make this a lot easier to paint, I just used the spray paint to paint my basket. And I really love this spray paint. I love the finish because it's not just flat, it's actually matte. So it looks different than just buying the flat black paint. So then I'm going to paint my thankful sign with the white spray paint, which is just flat white. And it doesn't really adhere to the side parts of this MDF, but it doesn't matter because it goes with the rest of the colors. So now I'm going to get my little pumpkins ready, and we're going to be using the back, but I wanted to take these little ornaments off so that I could use those in another project. So now I'm going to take a pencil and just make the lines of the pumpkin just to give me an idea of where to do my painting and the sections of the pumpkin. So I just first took my pumpkin chalk paint and I'm going to go along those lines and kind of loosely because I don't want it to be perfect, but I am going to leave little lines in between since they're brown, the color of this MDF, and then I'm going to add some white to the edge of my brush and then blend it in until it looks super pretty and gives it some dimension with those blended colors. And then finally I'm going to go in with some black to give it some shadows. And I don't need to paint my base because that's going to be covered up with the leaves and the thankful sign, but you'll see that in a second. And then for my shorter pumpkin, I'm going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to do it in black and white. So now for my stems, I'm just going to take my jute twine and tie a knot at the bottom and then wrap it up all the way to the top. I ended up not needing to glue anything on my orange one, but on my white one it wasn't quite staying, so I did end up using some glue on the back. And then I'm going to take my buffalo check ribbon and just tie a piece onto the top around below the jute twine, and then I'll dovetail the ends of those and just make those cutie patootie. So to cover up the holes of the basket at the bottom, I'm going to cut a little piece of my chopping mat and hot glue that into the bottom so that nothing falls out. I'm then going to take a couple of Jenga pieces and hot glue those because the side of the basket is not flat, and so I want my pumpkins to stand up flat when you hang this on the wall or set it on a countertop. So to do that, I just glued the Jenga pieces onto the chopping mat so that they would then prop those pumpkins up and they'll sit up straight. So now I'm going to take my maple leaves and cut those apart with my wire cutters, and then using a lot of hot glue, I'm going to place those at the base of the pumpkins, and that's going to cover up all the ickies of the stand with my paint and all that. And I'm using my handy dandy makeup spatula from Dollar Tree that was sent to me by my friend Caroline. She told me how to pronounce her name. So I'm just going to get those all in place, and you could actually stop here because it's already super cute and just leave it this way if you don't have a sign. But I just thought that just to add some more cuteness and sweetness and a message of thankfulness, that I would put my sign right on the front of the basket. So I just used some E6000 and hot glue and hit all the places where the word will hit my basket. And I don't want anything to hang over because I want this to be able to be hung or sat on a countertop. And here it is all done, and I have it hanging on the wall here, and I think it's so stinking precious, and I think I did a kind of a good job on my painting of my pumpkins, but I think it's super fall, super farmhouse, even throws in some of the buffalo check. And I'll also show you what it looks like sitting on the counter. You do have to have it against a wall, so if you set it on like a side table or something, just make sure it's up against a wall of some sort. But I think it's super cute, and I hope you guys like it too. For our next project, we'll be using an oval wood plaque, 2 packages of these wooden maple leaves, some wood letters, one of these pre-made gingham bows, and then I have some scrapbooking paper in fall colors, my white bistro chalk marker, some jute twine, and then my Waverly wax in antique, some Mod Podge, and this is the matte finish, and then my hot glue gun and my scissors. So I first took my scrapbooking paper and decided which colors and patterns I wanted to use, and then I'm going to take my maple leaf and put it on top of the paper and trace it out so that I can then cut it out. I ended up using 3 different patterns and colors, and I didn't end up using the red, but I'm just showing you how I'm cutting it out. And so I end up with some pretty oranges and yellows instead. So now I'm going to take my Mod Podge and just generously put it over the top of the wood, and then I'll put my paper on top of that, and then put some more Mod Podge on top of that. And because you can kind of see the texture of the Mod Podge once it dries, I made sure that I went from the middle and went outward so that that would kind of look like the veins of the leaf. And then using my Waverly wax in Antique, I'm going to paint it onto my plaque and then wipe it off with some paper towels, and I'll do the same thing with my letters. And I'm going to be spelling out the word autumn, and those are going to go on top of each of my leaves. So you'll have a total of 6 leaves since there's 6 letters in autumn. So then I just took a small piece of sandpaper and got the excess paper off of the leaves, and you could use an emery board for this, but I had cut these pretty close to the right size, so there wasn't a whole lot of sanding that needed to be done. And then once my wax was dry on my plaque, I took my sanding sponge and just sanded the edges of that to make it look nice and distressed. And then I put my leaves in the color order I wanted, and then just hot glued my letters onto each of those leaves, spelling out autumn. And then before I put everything together, I took a pencil and spelled out the word welcome. And then I'm going to use my white paint pen and go over that. And it takes a couple of times to make it dark enough and completely covered, but I'm going to use the downstroke method where all of the parts of the letter that goes downward are going to be thicker than the other lines. I did a video that had a short tutorial on this, and I'll have it linked in the description box below so that you can get more detail of how to use that downstroke method. And you'll see me pushing down on the tip of the pen every now and then, and that's how you activate these paint pens and get them all nice and juicy. So now I'm going to take one of those gingham pre-made bows and wrap that at the top of the jute twine that's already on the plaque. And there's already some twist tie stuff at the back of those bows, so I just use that to keep it in place. So now I'm going to take my jute twine and hot glue that to the back of the plaque first, and then I'm going to take a little piece of ribbon and put that over there just for some more stability. And then I'm going to do the same thing with each of the letters, and you definitely want to make sure that you have the right letter in the right place, because I have had that happen many times. And then just do the same thing with the ribbon so that it's all nice and secure. And here it is all finished, and I just love how this turned out, and I love these autumn colors, and I think this would be really pretty on a front door too instead of a wreath, or in those funny areas where you have the long skinny walls, or even on your back door. So anyway, I think this is super cute. It was super easy, and I hope you guys like it. For our final project, we're going to be using this plastic container, 5 packs of nautical rope, and then my hot glue gun, scissors, and wire cutters. I'm also going to end up adding some of the light colored hydrangeas at the end, but let's think about how many things we can actually wrap with nautical rope. So this just is the same thing that we do in any rope wrapping project. I'm just going to start at the base and go up the sides, and then every place where I run out of rope, I'm just going to add another piece and butt it up next to it so that you can't tell that it's separate pieces. I really liked this container because it has the long, tall edges, and I have another project that I have planned, so I got 2 of them. This does take a whole lot of glue. I think I ended up using like 5 sticks, and those are the long ones, but I think it turns out so pretty in the end. And then once you get to the top, in order to cover the lip of the container, I just went on top of one of the rows and then made it go over that top lip twice so you couldn't see it. And then I'm going to take my hydrangeas and just cut them apart and then put a couple of leaves and prettiness in there. And then one of the little pumpkin ornaments that we took off of our second project, I'm going to tuck him in there, and you are done. And here's how it turned out. And I think this is so stinking cute and very fall. I used one of the Dollar Tree green bottles that I love so much and just stuck some books and a couple of pumpkins in there. And it just makes a really sweet little vignette for fall. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up, comment, let me know what you think. If you're not already, please consider hitting that subscribe button down below so that we can grow this channel. I hope everyone has a blessed day, and remember to always be the light. Bye!